Yeah, well, our deadline is coming up right now in a couple of days. And I think you've just heard a lot of chatter about, what we're asking for is not sustainable for the business. And being on this side with Unrivaled, I know what it takes to run a sustainable business. So I think if they can't find a model that makes that happen, they need to put people in place who can, because we've proven that it is possible. There is a way, and we're thriving in that. And so I do think a deal's going to get done, but
what's happening behind the scenes tells a very different story than what's being projected publicly. On Monday, Unrivaled President Alex Bazell openly admitted that the league is willing to explore any possibility when it comes to working with the WNBA. His words were careful, diplomatic, and deliberately open-ended. There's nothing on the table or off the table. On the surface, that sounds collaborative. In reality, it translates to one thing: Unrivaled needs support. This is the same league that initially positioned itself as an alternative to the WNBA, a disruption, a bold reimagining of professional women's basketball. They invested heavily, offered high salaries, marketed themselves as a better solution for players, and leaned into the idea that the existing system was broken. But now, after spending millions, the posture has shifted. The disruptor is quietly asking the institution it challenged whether there's room to work together. That alone would be understandable. Startups pivot. Markets change. Reality hits. But here's where the situation turns chaotic. While Bazell is publicly extending olive branches and signaling openness to partnership, his co-founder is doing the opposite on national television. And FISA is openly questioning the leadership of WNBA Commissioner Cathy Engelbert, suggesting that the league needs to be run differently, implicitly by people who think like her. You cannot play both roles at once. You cannot ask an organization for partnership while simultaneously questioning the competence of its leadership. That isn't negotiation. That's contradiction. And contradictions erode trust quickly, especially in professional sports ecosystems where relationships matter as much as money. From the WNBA's perspective, this creates an impossible dynamic. Why would a league partner with an entity that publicly undermines its authority? Why would leadership extend support to a group that frames itself as proof of their failure? That's not leverage, that's a miscalculation. This is what desperation often looks like in polished form. Confident language masking uncertainty. Public criticism paired with private outreach. Unrivaled wants legitimacy, infrastructure, and long-term security, all things the WNBA already has. But instead of approaching from a position of humility or alignment, the messaging suggests superiority without sustainability. And in professional sports, sustainability always wins. The league that owns the infrastructure, the history, the media relationships, and the institutional trust holds the real power. Unrivaled may have ambition, but ambition without alignment often collapses under its own weight.
Unrivaled is in major trouble, as now it seems they are begging the WNBA to partner with them because the league may be sinking. We got to get into this article. You know what's crazy is throughout this article, it seems as if Unrivaled is looking for the WNBA to partner with them.
The January 9th deadline matters more than most people realize. That's when the current window for collective bargaining negotiations closes. And this is where FISA's position becomes genuinely complicated. She's advocating for higher salaries within the WNBA while simultaneously operating a competing league that depends on WNBA players needing supplemental income. Those two goals directly conflict with each other. If the WNBA successfully negotiates salaries high enough to eliminate the need for overseas play, what happens next? What happens to Unrivaled's core value proposition? If players no longer need a short-season alternative to boost earnings, the appeal of Unrivaled diminishes significantly. This isn't speculation, it's structural reality. According to reporting from Front Office Sports, Unrivaled approached the WNBA back in September seeking a formal partnership. The response was not ambiguous. It wasn't "let's explore it" or "we'll revisit later." The WNBA said no, flatly. That decision reflected confidence, not hesitation. So why is Alex Bazell raising the idea again now? Because circumstances changed. The competitive environment shifted, and it didn't shift in Unrivaled's favor. More leagues entered the space. Player commitments diversified. The novelty wore off. And suddenly, independence looked far less sustainable than collaboration. From the WNBA standpoint, the calculus is simple. They don't need Unrivaled to survive. Unrivaled, however, may need them. That imbalance defines the entire conversation. It's why earlier rejection matters, and it's why renewed outreach now reads as urgency rather than opportunity. Keir's public confidence clashes with that reality. She's arguing for reform while relying on the very system she critiques. That's a dangerous position, especially when timelines, money, and long-term survival are on the line.
And what will your role be this year off the court, Nafis?
talent like that, people we didn't have last year as well, while bringing back a lot of the stars from last year. I think it's going to miss that. So just really excited to grow the game, expand the footprint, hopefully create new fans, people who love the players, the game. It's going to be really fun.
Yeah, and Philly, they're talking about it, girl. They cannot wait. They cannot wait for Unrivaled to show up. Got to talk about the WNBA, because you have been a key voice in the negotiations with the Players Association. Is there any update that you can give us on the process right now?
Not right now. We're a little bit of a standstill. You know, our timeline is coming up in a couple of days. It's going to expire. But I think we're just excited to show at Unrivaled that it is possible to pay the players and create a successful business. And that's what we hope to do.
Pay close attention to how the question was handled. Robin Roberts asked directly about collective bargaining negotiations, a topic that demands specificity, accountability, and clarity. Instead of addressing it head-on, Keir pivoted seamlessly into what sounded like a promotional pitch for Unrivaled. The message was clear. We've already proven this can work. We pay players and run a successful business. But that raises an obvious question. What exactly does successful mean in this context? Unrivaled's first season benefited heavily from novelty. Curiosity drives attention early. Fans wanted to see something new. Players were intrigued by higher pay and a different format. But novelty is not a business model. Once the initial excitement fades, sustainability becomes the real test. And that's where the numbers and landscape start to tell a less flattering story. Year 2 arrives without the same buzz. Meanwhile, alternatives continue to multiply. Project B, a new 5-on-5 traveling league, already has commitments from established stars like Alyssa Thomas and Jewel Lloyd for its 2026 launch. Athletes Unlimited continues to operate. Overseas leagues in Europe still offer top-tier salaries and competitive basketball. Instead of a growing ecosystem, women's basketball is becoming increasingly fragmented. Fragmentation is dangerous. In a crowded market, the league without deep infrastructure, brand recognition, and long-term broadcastability is always the most vulnerable. That league is not the WNBA. It's Unrivaled. The WNBA has decades of institutional presence, media partnerships, fan bases, and developmental pathways. Unrivaled does not. It relies on borrowed relevance that disappears the moment WNBA players no longer need it. So when Keir frames Unrivaled as proof that the WNBA model is outdated, she ignores a critical reality. Paying players more in the short term does not automatically create a sustainable business. Sustainability requires scale, continuity, and integration within the broader basketball ecosystem. Right now, Unrivaled exists alongside other leagues, not above them. The pivot wasn't accidental. It was avoidance, because answering directly about CBA negotiations would require acknowledging that the WNBA remains the central pillar of women's professional basketball, the very thing Unrivaled cannot afford to admit publicly.
All right, so they're talking about not taking less than what they're owed, and here we are with the Pay Us What You Owe Us campaign once again. So, I mean, I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't see the owners bending. I'm interested to see what's going to happen by this January 9th deadline, man. I'm interested to see what's going to happen.
Listen carefully to the language being used. Bazell says he doesn't believe WNBA exclusivity is close. On the surface, that sounds reassuring, as if there's plenty of time for alternative leagues to thrive. But the article itself undermines that optimism almost immediately. Within WNBA circles, there's growing belief that the league is only one more collective bargaining agreement away from offering salaries that justify exclusivity. That's not a decade away. That's potentially 3 to 5 years. So the real question becomes simple. Can Unrivaled survive that long without WNBA support? Right now, the league is burning investor capital at a rapid pace. 6-figure salaries for a 3-on-3 format may attract players short-term, but it does not create long-term development or infrastructure. 3-on-3 basketball does not translate directly to 5-on-5 professional play. It sharpens some skills, but it doesn't replicate WNBA systems, spacing, or physical demands. That matters. The NBA has the G League as a developmental pipeline. The WNBA has no equivalent need for a 3-on-3 exhibition league. From a league perspective, Unrivaled doesn't function as development. It functions as entertainment. And entertainment without strategic value becomes a cost, not an asset. If the WNBA were to partner with Unrivaled, what would they actually gain? A short-season exhibition product that doesn't improve player readiness, doesn't expand infrastructure, and doesn't grow the core league? That's not a partnership. That's a subsidy. The WNBA doesn't need to subsidize a competitor, especially one questioning its leadership. The league is playing the long game. Unrivaled is fighting the clock. That's the reality beneath the rhetoric. And no amount of confidence on television can change it.
I'm pretty sure they're not going to be good But we will see. So Alex Bazell basically said, hey, we're open to working with the WNBA and all these things. Here he says, Bazell has been open about Unrivaled's effort to work with the WNBA from the onset. In September, he told Front Office Sports that Unrivaled went to the WNBA early and was open to a formal partnership. The WNBA declined. Here it says, what you look at right now, there's a collaboration that's going on in NBA Europe. Bazell said that was not a formal partnership before. As long as you can look at the space in an innovative lens, anything is doable, anything is possible. By this time next year, Project B, the new traveling 5-on-5 league, plans to be up and running with a number of former and current Unrivaled players committed to play an inaugural season.
Watch her expression closely when she says the phrase sustainable business. There's no hesitation, no uncertainty, just absolute confidence. And Faisa Care isn't speaking like someone testing an idea. She's speaking like someone delivering a verdict. In that moment, she essentially tells the entire WNBA that its leadership has failed and needs to be replaced because Unrivaled, in her view, has already figured out what the league could not. That is not a subtle critique. That is a direct challenge to the authority, competence, and direction of the WNBA itself. Coming from anyone else, it might sound like bold ambition. Coming from someone who co-founded a league that is actively searching for external support, it lands very differently. Because while Keir is publicly positioning Unrivaled as proof that a better model exists, the league she's defending is quietly facing the reality that it cannot stand fully on its own. That contradiction, confidence on camera, vulnerability behind the scenes, is a part of the story that has gone largely ignored. What makes the statement even more striking is the timing. The WNBA is in the middle of sensitive collective bargaining discussions. Tensions around pay, revenue sharing, and long-term sustainability are already high. Into that environment, Keir steps forward not as a neutral advocate for players, but as a competitor suggesting the league itself is obsolete. That's not just commentary, it's a strategic move, whether intentional or not. But strategy only works when messaging aligns with reality. And that's where things begin to unravel. Unrivaled is not an established, profitable alternative. It is a startup league still proving its viability. It depends on star power borrowed from the WNBA, attention generated by comparison to the WNBA, and credibility that only exists because the WNBA exists. To argue that the league you rely on should replace its leadership while simultaneously needing its cooperation is a risky contradiction. This is why that moment matters. It's not just about what Keir said. It's about what her confidence masks. Beneath the bold rhetoric is a league still seeking stability, still dependent on goodwill, and still searching for a long-term identity. Calling for change at the top of the WNBA may sound powerful, but without leverage, power quickly turns into exposure. And exposure reveals the cracks no one wants to discuss.